The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our savior, overcoming hurdles, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Paula Show. Tonight we're speaking about environmental issues. As you know, our Earth is a beautiful place. 165 major rivers, 5 oceans, and more than 25 seas, and over 25 deserts, all on 7 continents. Due to our disrespect for this beautiful gift that Jehovah has given to us, we are now faced with many issues regarding environmental pollution. Tonight, my guest on the Paula Show is Mr. Tahambe Smith. He's an environmentalist. And what else are you, darling?
I'm a civil servant, I'm an Antiguan, and I'm somebody that just cares about the environment.
Very well. So you'll hear more about environmental pollution and how we can change our behavior to preserve this beautiful earth for generations to come. Thank you for watching the Paula Show. We'll be returning right after this commercial break. Remember to watch the Paula Show via CTV Channel 2 on Tuesday nights at 9, and Sundays there's a rebroadcast at 1 in the afternoon. The Paula Show inspires, entertains, and transforms behavior. Remember also to like me on Facebook, The Paula Show. Tahambe Smith is my guest tonight. At 29,002 feet, Mount Everest in Nepal is the tallest mountain in the world, and even there, pollution exists. So what happens over the last 62 years, people have been climbing Mount Everest. Over 4,000 climbers actually, and these are some of the items they've left behind. Oxygen canisters, broken climbing equipment, trash, human waste, dead bodies, and they're transforming the once pristine peak into a huge pile of garbage. Environmental pollution affects us all.
And that's the big thing, because when we hear about environmental pollution, we think about unsightly waste or unsightly garbage and so forth, but it's everything that's not natural, basically, can be classified as environmental waste because or pollution, because it's not natural. Because everything that's natural decomposes, breaks down naturally and goes back to soil and then gives rebirth for new life and so forth. So human beings have, unfortunately, due to population rise, and you get more money to spend, and so you can take a trip.
We have more
so
demands.
Forth, more demands and so
Yes.
forth. You're looking for a better way, and increasing that now becomes evident where you have so much more trash and so much waste and so much excess.
And environmental pollution occurs in various forms. So some persons might think it's only solid waste.
No.
But we have air, water, soil, noise, radioactive, and light. Interestingly, light.
Yep.
Light pollution?
Yeah, because some persons are skin sensitive or light sensitive, and you have that situation, or you have some situation where you don't get enough light or excessive light due to urbanization, the glare some of buildings and so forth. So even with us walking, before you could just walk and feel good, now you have to be squinting your eyes because there's so much glare from so much reflective surfaces and so forth. So the light becomes painful rather than helpful.
So maybe all of us need to walk around with our UV shades.
We need to. We
Yeah.
definitely need to.
Ah, that's a commercial for sunglasses hot. That's where I purchased my sunglasses.
Me too.
You mentioned earlier population increase, 7.53 billion people living on Earth and counting. And if we're anything like the Americans, individually in Antigua, we generate 4.6 pounds of trash daily. And because the trash is not being broken down as it ought to, we have a buildup of trash. And of course, we have the rats, many problems.
And that comes from us not really taking seriously about recycling and separation of waste because as it stands now, everything basically goes to the dump or down to the, well, down to cooks. So there is no way that plastics are one side, cardboards are so. Cardboards are, would
That
be
takes
more.
a lot of sorting to Hambe. I'm just telling you,
No,
it
I
takes
understand.
a lot
It
of
does. It does.
effort and
It
sorting.
does. But if it is that you have a policy in place that you have to sort at home, it doesn't become that burdensome because it becomes repetitive over time, and then you understand what you need to do, so then it's not an issue. But because we don't really have policies in place that demand that you do so at home, it becomes burdensome if you say, like, hey, start doing this tomorrow. You're like, oh, no, not me. But if you travel, you conform quickly because you
It's
learn the hard
amazing.
way. Because if you don't put your trash properly, it's left there, and then you'll be like, okay, that's the guy, and
You'll
you
be
don't-
fined.
And you'll be fined.
I remember traveling to Toronto, and there was a receptacle for cardboard, a receptacle for regular garbage that can be broken down, composting, you
Yep.
call it. And then, right, and then there was another one for the plastic bottles, the water bottles. And it was so easy to do that. My husband will tell you I'm resistant to sorting. I'm one of
Trash.
those persons that
Trash.
think trash,
Trash.
everything goes into the trash. But I'm changing my behavior. Honestly, I'm
know.
changing my behavior.
What's happening as population increases, you have more demands, and the more demands you have, you have to basically produce more, and the more
Yeah.
you produce is the more waste you end up with. So what persons are trying to do or trying to enforce is to recycle. So you reuse what you already produce, and then you break it down and use it back. So the easiest way, separate it, so then you can collect cardboards one way, you can collect plastics
But
one
I'm
way, and
not
bottles
getting
and so.
much encouragement in Antigua, you know. Why? There was a recycling plant up in Powell's, and my husband would bag the plastic bottles and the softener bottles, everything plastic, and he will drive to Powell's to deliver them. Then he's returning home with them still in the truck. And I'm asking, what's happening? They're closed, there's no sign, you don't know what's happening. And then it's so unsightly on that particular compound. There's so much debris, garbage, whatever. I guess people just take their things and pile them up there not knowing what to do.
Because
So
unfortunately,
what should we do?
Well, everything takes resources, and in this particular instance, it takes money to basically start up a recycling initiative. And once it's done and managed properly, it pays for itself over time. But what has been happening is that you will start a brand, and then personnel increasing, payroll increases, and then the funds aren't coming in because you're not
Okay.
really meeting your quota that you should meet, and then it falls apart. Or you promise intervention from the authorities, it doesn't really reach where it's supposed to go, and then you have that chaotic scene where the unsightly people are just bringing and stuff because there's no sign, there's nothing. So
Nothing.
the recycling plant has been going through its hiccups over the years, and it's high time we take it more seriously as a holistic
I
approach.
would think so, because if we're signing on to all these various conventions, and you have the Paris Agreement, I don't know if Antigua signed the Paris Agreement, but 197 countries signed that agreement.
Yes, we did.
We did?
Yeah.
And imagine we signed the Paris Agreement and we take a photo and the people realize what's happening. That's crazy. Then we're talking about environmental pollution tonight. Acid rain, depletion of the ozone layer, global warming. And there's a big gaping hole in the ozone layer.
Well, these can be attributed to our actions several decades ago. Okay, it's not last year or the year before or even 10 years ago. These actions that we're seeing now, are repercussions that we're experiencing now, are from our previous actions. So what we're doing now today, or what we're affecting today, is for our future generations to encounter. So now we're seeing from maybe our parents or even their parents before them, us not really taking environmental issues that seriously, not really understanding the implications of not really being
Or maybe they
responsible.
didn't have to, because,
Out of sight, out of mind.
but apart from that, the world's population wasn't so large, and
So basically you would have less people, places to go and really bring in what you have, because
Less manufacturing was done.
industrialization, if you follow the history of
Yes.
the planet, basically industrialization basically spurred on
with the emissions and everything.
with
But we're going to
everything.
talk about that in the next segment. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. Tahambe Smith, an environmentalist, is here with us tonight, and we're speaking about environmental pollution. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us, please. Incidentally, we were speaking about the recycling plant, and it would be remiss of me not to remind you that there's a 25-cent tax on sodas and
Beverages.
Wasn't that the purpose?
That was the purpose. So that should have facilitated or would have facilitated the running of.
So why is the plant closed? Well, I mean, people are still drinking soda.
People still drinking juices every day, and bottles are being reproduced and produced every single day. So you just have to ask the question, why aren't we taking recycling more seriously in this country?
So let me ask you another question, because I'm very serious about the environment. Those new receptacles, garbage receptacles that have been nicely positioned around St. John's, and I do think that it's a good effort.
They look nice. They're good.
They look nice, and it's good. But there's a partition for
waste
recycled
separation,
goods
for
and
basically
waste separation and
separation,
recycled
basically.
goods. Fine. When those bags with the recycled material are removed, since the plant is closed, it's likely that they will be
Taken to cooks.
recycled goods, recycled material, taken to cooks.
Recyclables. That's the term for it.
Recyclables. Well,
would
you're
probably
here
be
to
taken
educate us
into-
too.
To cooks. Because I'm not aware of any facility that actually is recycling. I'm not aware. If they are, I'm
But
not
you're
aware.
an
And I'm telling you,
environmentalist,
I am
so you
not
should
aware.
know.
I am not aware of any up and running recyclable facility
And we
here,
signed the Paris Agreement,
among others.
among
Okay,
others.
the last thing we signed on to was the marine pollution accord, basically to help to.
We get into the marine. Governments and leaders of industries need to work harder and smarter at finding ways to satisfy consumer without sacrificing the environment.
That's a ticklish seesaw.
So I'm
Because-
going to a particular point. Hundreds of vehicles are landed from Japan. And exhaust fumes, disposing of these vehicles, tires eventually, because
End up at
they're
cooks.
not new. So the lifetime is not going to be as long as possibly a new vehicle.
And if you're not maintaining your engine properly, it'll go bust sooner rather than later.
So these vehicles, eventually, we'll have to dispose of them. It's Cook's landfill again.
If not the landfill directly, some space along or around the landfill. But
Or
Cooks,
some persons just leave them on the side of the street or on a
Until-
vacant lot of land
yeah,
to
until-
deteriorate.
over time.
Incidentally, when leaders are serious about environmental issues, this is what happens. On Monday, 1st April 2019, drivers of diesel cars more than 4 years old and of gasoline-powered engines more than 13 years old must pay £12.50, the equivalent of $16.30 US, fee, day or night, when entering central London. You think this might work in Antigua?
Before you can implement fees, you have to give me options. And if there aren't any options, then I don't think
I
that
don't understand that.
options, basically. If it is that you can take public transportation into St. John's quite easily,
Yes.
you don't have to drive to St. John's, then
That's true.
of course you can charge me. But if you can't really address transporting me without using my vehicle, because in these large countries or even in other countries with serious people, they implement measures that basically limit you, so you have no excuse but to do
Yes.
what we are asking you to do. And if you violate, then we can charge you, fine you, and there's no complaint. But if it is that you're telling me for me to drive my older vehicle because I can't afford a new vehicle
Yes.
because of circumstances, then I'm penalized for going into St. John's that basically there isn't any way for you to park properly, there isn't any way for you to, you're just trying to get to do your business, and I think that's a bit hard. But if you look at the policy and you start to try to limit the amount of vehicles into St. John's, you have to provide proper parking,
Well, oh, that's a
Workers,
hazard.
Workers that work in St. John's on a daily basis, they would have to basically go into these areas, and then you can start implementing vehicle age and so forth and so forth.
So it's not a bad idea to
No,
introduce the tax.
It's not, but
it's just that you have
to take a
engage.
holistic approach towards it, because
Yeah.
it just becomes another burden on a select few. Because if I can go get a new vehicle tomorrow, I don't have to pay the fine. But if I can't, because that is all I have.
And most of those vehicles coming from Japan, they're 6 years and older.
Exactly. So
some 13, some 14, so they'll definitely fall into the tax categories. Exactly. Worldwide, bad outdoor air quality caused an estimated 4.2 million premature deaths in 2016. This is from a World Health Organization report. 90% of the affected persons were living in low and middle income countries. So it seems as if environmental pollution and poverty are cousins.
Cousins
are
are
related.
Friends, are bosom pals. It's unfortunate because you have so many people living. You travel anywhere that have a large population of people, you will just see trash around the place. You'll just see it's
certain areas of New York.
New York, in the Caribbean, I've been to Santo Domingo. I'm telling you, the certain parts of the capital, you hold your head and say, wow. Other parts are
I've seen that.
Wow, nice. And Jamaica, same thing, certain parts. So it seems as if the poorer you are, the more inconvenienced you are, because other persons are looking to dump whatever they dump in where you are.
In your space.
In the space that you're occupying, because realistically, if you're poor, you don't have no space. That's how they look at it.
You have no rights.
You have no rights, you have nothing, you're poor, and that should not be. The most vulnerable in society basically should be looked after as much as the most affluent person in society, because we're all human beings.
Well, listen, it's not going to get any better sooner. Your fossil fuel, burning, emitting carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and people are inhaling that. And then the babies are born. They're inhaling that as well. And you're talking about that, but in 1984 in Bhopal, India, remember that incident? 8,000 people died as a result of a disaster, an environmental disaster. And even up to today, decades later, the people are still affected. So maybe we need to read more, maybe we need to understand more. I don't know, but it seems as if people are not getting the message, to include me, that if we don't take care of this environment, we are all going to be affected, affluent or poor. Our professionals travel to various meetings. How can you visit a place like Singapore and a place like Japan, and still we have all these issues with garbage and people not being fined and construction workers just, tossing their garbage any place? I mean, we need to learn from our experiences.
Well, in that regard, I will commend the authorities that they actually passed they gave the litter act a little bit more teeth.
In what way?
In terms of more persons should be out on the streets, there are more fines, heavier fines and penalties and so forth, once you can prove that somebody basically dumped illegally and so forth. It's more guarded towards the illegal dumping from industrial waste and so forth. And also the litter box that you have from a personal household that will just decide that my household trash is just your problem, throw it out the car and so forth.
Lord.
So they're trying, but in terms of not emulating what you see, Antigua is too small for us to still be twiddling our fingers about recycling. It is too small. If it is that we can't do it ourselves here, can we not find a market somewhere in the world or even in the region? Because some of the bigger islands, they have industries.
Yes.
So how can't we not tap into them to feed them, not just garbage as Percy would say, but if it's a particular quantity, size, texture, whatever, and we have it here and we can get it to you for you to use in your factories to, rather than going to natural resources to more digging, more burning and so forth. Let us use what we already have. Then of course we can change our course here in Antigua and have a better footprint in the environment.
Is it costly to be environmentally friendly?
No, because it pays for itself over time. Because
Okay.
with these large waste management companies, like you'll find in Florida, in New York, and so anywhere anywhere in the developed countries, you have companies that they call waste management, and all they do is manage waste. I was in Florida in December and was driving to visit some families, and I passed two major landfills. I'm telling you, the landfills, our landfill is like maybe a part of that landfill. It is so huge.
Right.
And you have this pungent odor coming from it. Well, what's that smell? But when you look, they have pipes and they're funneling natural gas. But natural gas has an offensive odor, some would say. But it's being funneled from the natural processes within the landfill. And the gases are
So
being
they've
tapped out
converted the waste into natural gas, something that we can
productive,
use.
and I think it's used for either electricity generation or, yeah. reuse.
Interesting.
So that's something that we have a landfill here too. There was talk, I think, recently about looking into how best you can maybe turn some of the waste to energy. There are different ways of doing it and so forth, but one of the easiest, I think, is let us just try to tap the natural gas that's being emanated from there naturally, from the natural processes, and see how best we can channel that to better our energy need.
Do you believe there are people here who can undertake such a task?
Antiguans are dynamic people, and I would not put it past us that we have
Probably have several
some
students who would have studied
something.
someplace
I'm
that are
telling
just
you,
here twiddling their thumbs.
are being pushed into the side corner by somebody that never even read the book before.
E-waste is a big issue as well. And people are wondering, what's e-waste? We discard our monitors, our hard drives, our computers.
And those, I'm telling you, to be created, they produce a lot of toxic waste. They have a lake in China that's man-made, that is just toxic runoff from the production of earth minerals that we use in our cell phones, our televisions, our cameras, things that our hooked-on devices that we can't let go. And we're so wired and so connected now that we are driving ourselves into the ground, basically.
We're driving production.
And we're driving it into the ground.
It's a lifestyle changes, you know.
No, because you can't tell me that I've come across a newfound income, newfound wealth, and I can't buy the nice things that Paula has.
Oh, that Paula has.
And that's just how the mindset is, because we watch television, we see lifestyles of the rich and famous, and you try to achieve as close as possible. And the first thing, as soon as you have money, is more disposable income, is to buy more stuff.
And the manufacturing companies, they're thinking of profit rather than sustainable environment, not realizing it will affect them as well eventually.
Well, it had, because if you remember, I think it maybe 4 years ago, they had massive flooding in Singapore, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and that slowed down the whole chain of production for iPhones and computers, and so, because different channels were affected, and you had to basically reroute your production line. So it was a big scale. Are we going to be on to meet our targets on time and so forth? Because I think it happened before Christmas season was coming along. So the whole
and they're looking forward to their profits at Christmas, because you know at Christmas time people just purchase unnecessarily sometimes. So landfills have been closed for one or both of these two reasons. They're full or they're contaminating groundwater. Our landfill wouldn't be contaminating any groundwater. You're scratching your head.
No, because you see, you don't want to be like scaremongering and because
but just tell me the truth.
There are serious concerns at the landfill that needs to be addressed. Serious concerns, and I don't want to be one of the persons to be like, oh, you Mr. want to derail or, you know, but there's
a possibility.
Serious issues, because that issue has been raised several times before in the past about leaching from the landfill into the natural groundwater way and all that and so forth. Because landfills are basically managed correctly once they're not overused, and you cap them off, and then you make sure that they aren't leaking and all that.
Is Cook's overused?
Yes. Cook's landfill has been deemed overused, its capacity.
But where else can we go?
That's just the thing. That's just the thing. Another site maybe on Cook's, I think that they were thinking about to do a second landfill, but I don't know how far they are.
And then you know there's some community leaders and advocates who are going to say, we don't want any landfill around us.
So this is why now we have to seriously start looking at recycling. Just imagine if
Incinerating?
we could recycle. You recycle a lot of bottles so they don't go down to the waste, a lot of plastics so they don't go down to the waste, a lot of cardboards and boxes and so forth. What e-waste and so forth, because they can be broken down and reused, because the minerals and metals that they use for the conductivity and all that and so forth, they don't die, they don't dissipate, they just stay there. So you just go take down the plastics, you can repurpose. So you have to have
the creative ways.
The will. You have to find the will and the policy behind of it also, and the support, because that is important. Some places the support isn't there, but the will is there, so you can make your way. But if the support and the will isn't there to actually do something better, then it won't ever happen.
Well, we'll keep working on it. That's why you're on the Paula Show.
I saw an article the other day saying that for the first time, reusable energy is becoming far cheaper than coal or even oil or not, So
but that's
it's happening.
Good news.
It's happening. It's happening. Because more and more persons and countries are realizing that you have to do something in order for not to, because scientists are saying if we allow the earth to heat as it is going towards and we do nothing about it, we haven't seen hurricanes yet.
Oh, no.
We haven't. We haven't seen storms yet. We haven't really felt.
So we'll be wiped out.
If we saw what Maria did and can testify for Maria, yeah.
In Barbuda, imagine.
Yes.
Tambi, you're scaring
but
me.
It is
I'm
scary.
going to recycle more.
But you alone can't really.
Well, that's it. But I'm saying if I take responsibility and the audience that's watching, thousands of people take responsibility, then at least that's a start.
What we can do is we can start demanding from our leaders and our policymakers that we start taking and looking at recycling more seriously.
Exactly, and the recycling plant has to be reopened.
Because it is a better way for me to enrich myself. No, it is a holistic approach to a problem and creating a solution in the same time. So that's one of the major, because many times if it's not profit driven for persons or individuals, then I don't care about that. But if they see that they can make a buck or two, then you see trucks coming and begging you for stuff and so forth, because somebody realized that money can be made. And in recycling, there is money to be made if it's approached properly.
And with unemployment increasing in Antigua and Barbuda, that's a sector that we can tap into and find work for those young men, especially who are just liming. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. We're transforming behavior and we're providing solutions to the environmental issues that are affecting us in Antigua and globally. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us, please. 17th April 2019, an Italian shipping company admitted in the U.S. to dumping oily waste and other pollutants at sea rather than paying to dispose of them properly, and will pay a $4 million fine.
The environment has been suffering or suffered at the hands of these greedy corporations, or not just greedy, but persons that are trying to enhance their life or better themselves and so forth at the expense of the environment, because you take, and we're not going. I would love to see Antigua finally marry the environment with tourism.
Me too.
It's not just about the beaches, and it's really not just about the beaches. We have endemic species, we have beautiful landscapes, we have things that can be wrapped into our package. Imagine you come into the airport and there's some beautiful photographs of some of our endemic species or even some of the wildlife that visit our country, just like tourists visit. A lot of different things visit Antigua and Barbuda, you know. You have whales that will pass by on their way down
You're
south.
talking about whales. I went to Jumbie Bay some years ago, and my family and I and some other persons from EAG. Boy, mosquitoes all night long. We waited for these leatherback turtles.
Yeah, turtles.
One lady, boy, she laid about, I don't know, must be 1,000 eggs. And then when she was through, it's almost as if she was so tired and lazy, and then she scratched her way back to the ocean. And watching National Geographic, I know that's the end of the story. She's not turning back to look for them.
No,
That's
that's it.
the end
She
of the
did her job.
story.
We don't have lions, we don't have bears, we don't have zebras, but we do have endemic species here. For example, in Barbuda, they have the endemic Barbuda warbler that I have known persons paying a pretty penny to come to Antigua, to go to
Travel to
Barbuda,
Barbuda
just to
see
take
that.
a photograph, if possible, or even to say that they saw it.
They do that a lot in Costa Rica.
A photograph would be perfect, but if you can't get a photograph, at least you say, well, yes, I saw it. And these are things that we can tap into. We have areas in Antigua that are so pristine and lovely that rather than putting a concrete edifice or steel frame, why not let's just leave it there and you incorporate it into the natural environment and you have camping or clamping and different things and so forth. Let us divest our tourism offerings and not just be...
People, honestly, people are traveling from abroad and they're accustomed to the concrete
they are
jungle.
coming from
so they
places
want to
that
see
we
the
don't
greenery,
even
the
dream to
green
have.
spaces. But me, when I travel, I'm accustomed to green spaces, so I don't mind a little bit of the concrete.
I understand that. Just like me, because when I travel, I don't want to go to another beach.
No, I hate the beach anyway.
That's the last place I want to be. Let me see a mountain or a river or something that I don't have here.
I like museums.
And even with here, because when it rains, we have a seasonal waterfall. And Paula, would you even imagine a person went to visit this phenomena? Because once rainfall, it trickles down eventually. If you have heavy rainfall, it's a heavy pour. And you go up there with a bottle of water, you look at it, you drink it, and then you just leave the water
So there's
there.
waste there as well?
Yep.
It's another Mount Everest situation.
Right here in Antigua and Barbuda. So you're kind of scared to open up certain areas for people.
Yeah.
Because it's as if we have this way that once we go there, we don't leave those
our
footprints.
waste.
We leave waste behind. So that's one thing that we will have to try to curtail and change. And
or we'll have to post security at every location.
No. You spoke earlier of places, Thailand, that is so clean, and Singapore and so forth.
Singapore and Japan,
it wasn't
for sure.
by chance. It
Policies.
is policy
and education.
Enforcement and stringent fines.
Yes.
Because to spit.
Oh, Singapore, you better not spit that gum there.
You can't even try to spit, much less drop anything. And because you'll be penalized, and it'll be... So if we start enforcing and stop people realizing that they're
Do you realize how much money the government would collect?
Yes, we can collect a pretty
plenty money.
Once we enforce these things.
Because trust me, I have seen some crazy disposal of waste in Antigua. It's not nice.
I must say, I don't see... Before time, it used to be like, you're dodging bottles like a person, we just fling them out the cars. I don't see that prevalent now, I must say. But it still happens.
Damage is done to the environment. Damage is also done to sea animals. Plastic is killing more than 100,000 sea turtles and birds a year from ingestion and entanglement. Chemicals in plastics are released into the water as well as the atmosphere. Plastic has become a serious global problem.
Yeah, because it was a convenience and it became too convenient. And so much so that it's so convenient that there's so much inconvenience now caused by plastics.
This is something that I read and I thought this must be looking really nasty. 79,000 tons of plastic debris divided into 1.8 trillion pieces now occupy an area 3 times the size of France. And this plastic garbage dump in the Pacific Ocean is between California and Hawaii. How does that happen? How does the plastic accumulate?
The ocean currents eventually, because there was one situation when a container ship ran into some problems, so a few fell off. And one of the cargoes on there was some rubber duckies. Rubber duckies.
Yes.
And you would not imagine, the accident occurred somewhere in the Atlantic, I believe. And some of those rubber duckies, after a couple of years, ended up all over the world.
Recently, there was a beached whale on the northern coast of Sardinia, Italy. the whale died. And when they looked into the stomach of the whale, they found 48.5 pounds of plastic in the whale's stomach. It may not sound like a lot of plastic because whales are so huge.
No, but just think that you have something that is toxic, poisoning you inside the system and your body just can't deal with it. Eventually, it just kill you.
Because they're of the view that's what killed the whale, the
Yeah.
chemicals, the toxins
Look,
from...
plastic behaves similar to things that the animals, marine animals, would eat sometimes. For example, plastic bags simulate jellyfishes, and turtles eat jellyfish.
Oh, yes.
So that is
yes.
why you will have situations where turtles would digest plastics, because they seem as if there's something.
Bobbing underwater like a jellyfish.
Whales sometimes inadvertently, because some of them aren't really hunters. So they will just basically eat
whatever they're able to
plankton
get.
and small organisms. So once they're opening up and they're basically
moving with the flow of
sucking in
the
their
waves,
food,
yeah.
other things get trapped inside of them. Also, so sometimes you're not even looking for something and it just ends up inside of you because there's just so much of it. And also, once it breaks down, as you mentioned, it breaks down even smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So then the food that they eat, sometimes even themselves are contaminated, and then eventually. So you see where we're going with that?
Where
So
you're going with that is human health.
Exactement.
Because here it is.
We are the last.
We're
We're
in the
the
food
apex
chain.
predators. We're the
And so
apex
we're
predators.
saying, you know, I don't eat chicken, I don't eat red meat, I
only-
eat only seafood. But even the seafood is contaminated.
And it's getting more contaminated.
And we have no way of knowing. I love angelfish and I love old wife. I hope they're not eating any contaminated
What
food.
you can't tell, because
But
they
that's
may be
true.
eating
Metals, all kind of things.
small fish eat some bigger fish, big fish eat small fish, and goes right up the chain.
So what do we eat? Because
You grow your own food in your backyard.
they're
Plants too,
contaminated too with
because
all the
we-
pesticides and everything.
And that's a good point, because the sargassum seaweed, we're now finding out that it's from the overuse of pesticides.
Oh my Lord.
And you have rivers, South America, even in the US, that are huge rivers that just dump all this
Waste, yeah.
into the
From
river,
the
into the
factories and
ocean.
otherwise.
It produces this great nutrient-rich soup that the sargassum seaweed basically just thrives on. So it just explodes, and then we end up with it coming in our shores, and then you.
But
have
we're
the
not the
whole-
only ones.
No, not
They
just
are-
us.
Bob,
When
they
I
just
said
had
we,
it badly here in the Caribbean. Maybe because of the warmth too.
It's just providing what is needed, like the perfect storm.
Yes.
All of the nutrients are there. The energy is needed. The sun is always shining.
Yes.
Remember now, if you in Antigua and you feel the sun hot, you go up on the ocean, up on the water, you feel the sun real hot. And just imagine that
Yes.
over that large area, and you have that growth that is just uncontrollable, and then we see the ramifications that it affects our tourism product
Yeah.
also. So
How are we doing with it now, though? I don't hear much about it.
it's coming, it's starting again.
We just spoke about water pollution,
Marine pollution.
marine pollution. How important are mangroves and reefs?
Well, in terms of, it does depend on the service that you're looking for them to provide, because in terms of reefs, coral reefs, they offer protection both in terms of food security and also in terms of protecting from wave action. Food security in terms of once they're healthy coral reefs, you will have a variety of different fishes around them, and some of the fish that you mentioned, species that you mentioned, they will be
The old wife and the angel.
the near-shore dwelling
Yes.
fishes, reef fishes basically.
Yes.
Mangroves now, by themselves, mangroves basically, look, they're multifaceted plants, because they provide filtration both from the sea and to the sea. They basically provide shore protection, definitely, because if you remember Bande Aceh, where they had the tsunamis,
the tsunami at
where you
Christmas
had
time.
mangroves untouched, the same tsunamis, the same wave action wasn't that devastating as the places that they were removed either for building dwelling homes or for building hotels. Once you remove the mangroves from the shoreline, you basically expose the shoreline now to wave action.
So why would any sensible person or group of persons remove mangroves,
Well, in terms,
given the devastation that can follow when mangroves are removed?
well, sometimes they think that the devastation would come in something uncommon, like you have a storm, and storms happen in a particular time frame, and if we're lucky, we dodge a bullet, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But once it happens, then you'll be holding your head and shaking and say, why? When,
Construct
as you said,
barriers.
develop.
When you had the natural barrier.
You had a natural barrier. If you're so inclined to remove mangroves, then you definitely would have to have a mindset for using engineer to basically circumvent the consequences of you removing the mangroves. So if it is that you just say, hey, I don't like to see them, I'm going to move them, give it time and you'll see what will happen to your development where that is concerned.
Global warming is likely to be the greatest threat of the 21st century. We're talking about solutions now. We're recycling. We should create more green spaces.
Definitely. Recycling helps, green spaces help, but then in the gambit of things globally, because it's a global problem, it's not an Antiguan situation where we can, because even if we plant every square inch of Antigua and Barbuda with trees, every square inch, it still won't circumvent what is to come. So it is not just us, but in our little small space, I think we can do more, much more than what we're actually doing.
Stop removing trees during construction.
Indiscriminate land removal, because you have land clearings all over. Persons would say to me, they're tearing down trees over here, why not making noise over here? They're tearing down trees over there, why not making noise? But they're tearing down trees over there, why are you making noise? It's as if you're not understanding the ramifications. You tear down trees on the mainland, yes, because you're looking to build and so forth, but the consequence of that is that we help removing pollinators and stuff.
The bees.
The bees, pollinators.
Scarce supply across the globe.
Insects and so forth that help to germinate trees. And we're crying, oh, we're seeing less fruit trees, we're seeing less trees, because we are causing the problems ourselves. You know, you go to nearshore areas, and many times it's so beautiful. You say you want to build a home here, you want to build a hotel, you want to do whatever you want to do there. But these unsightly trees are blocking my view from the seawater. So you just remove them, no problem. And then you realize now it starts to smell bad around the area.
Yeah.
The water looks murky and not so clean.
The trees were absorbing.
And just the whole ecosystem that was there.
Yeah.
Because it's not just
Kept
the mangrove trees alone. You have different marine species and vertebrates and invertebrates that they perform specific functions. And that's what, look, Antigua has some of the most beautiful waters, clean, pristine. But once you get close to shore, you see like it changes. It kind of looks more mossy and so forth, because either pollutants are coming close to that area from onshore, or you remove the natural trees and wildlife and so forth from there.
So it creates an imbalance.
Even sea cucumbers that you figure, oh, what's that? That look unsightly. Those have a function too.
I'm not a sea girl because I'm afraid of sharks.
Yeah, Jazz do that thing for me too.
How you know?
Yeah, Jazz did that for me.
Shake my hand. We have that in common. I know we had something in common. From the moment I watched Jaws, I decided sharks for the water, Paula for the land. And no matter years after, people are saying, Paula, but you're an adult now. When you mess with someone's psyche, trust me, maybe I need medication.
Well, I think if you watch Jaws today now, you say,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Not me. That's damaged my psyche. So much so that I didn't even want my children to learn to swim at Fort. All I'm thinking about, Jaws.
Well, just imagine us now having an endemic species of a snake, the Antigua race of snake, and many persons hear about a snake, and the first thing that it brings up, fear
of course, reptile.
Snake. No, so it's unfortunate, but we do have an endemic species here that's a reptile, and you find it nowhere. You find subspecies throughout the world, but you don't find the Antiguan race anywhere else in the world. But
and that's on Redonda?
No, that's within the same Nema area on Bird Island and Green Island and so forth.
Yeah. Environmental audit. We hold businesses accountable. So we can have an agreement that for 3 years, the company will be subjected to environmental compliance programs. And, so there's going to be oversight, but the oversight is not going to be by government or any of the business leaders. It's going to be an independent body. Yeah.
That
But again, that might take some money.
Everything takes money. Everything takes
But
money.
if you have the will, it
Once
can
you
be
have
done.
the will, it can be done, and then over time, it maybe eventually pays for itself.
We can produce clean energy, reduce our consumption of energy and water by using more efficient devices, LED light bulbs, innovative shower systems, and it costs less
Over time.
over time.
Because I've changed out all the bulbs in my home
Yeah,
to LED lights, and
we did that too.
I'm telling you, you never know them little light bulbs, those filament bulbs burn so much. You never knew until you see a bill and you say, hey, people must be punking me. Where's this can't be real.
And when with the LED
And
lights,
you go in and you
you've seen
see,
a vast
I've
difference.
seen, I have. I've seen a reduction in my bill. Might
So
be
we just need to
small.
make the necessary changes.
Yeah, but then if you're stubborn, sometimes you may have to get out the big stick or the big P policy, and that's the policy. You have to follow the
And
policy
enforce
and
the
enforce the
policy.
policy, and you'll have a better society.
We're wrapping up on the Paula Show tonight. Your closing remarks.
Well, I would definitely like to see Antigua get to the point where Antigua and Barbuda, as a matter of fact, because Barbuda has a serious problem in terms of waste management where there's just none. Basically,
Why?
there isn't any. It's just, eventually something it picks up and then it goes somewhere, and that's it. And unfortunately, some of it ends up right back into the lagoon. And that's another
And out to
conversation
sea.
for another day, because look, although we're small as a society, we can do our part in terms of reducing our footprint, and we definitely would have to start recycle even more than we're doing now. And if it is that we have to call our policymakers and ask the question, why aren't we recycling, and try to push them to get involved, because once there's the policy in place, you've seen that Antigua
Policy and enforcing the policy,
Antigua
because
basically can
what
shine
I've
above.
discovered is Antigua and Barbuda, we have a lot of laws, we have a lot of policies, but sometimes
the enforcement,
the enforcement
is
is
lacking.
just lacking. It's
Lacking.
absent. Tahambe Smith, thank you very much
you,
for
Paula, for
visiting
having
us
me.
on the Paula Show anytime.
No problem.
Tonight we spoke about environmental pollution, and I hope we're leaving you with sufficient information to transform your behavior. I know for a fact that I'm more inclined to recycle. Thank you for staying with us. Have a good evening. Goodbye.